Well, hello, everybody. We're just going to take a second, as usual, to admit people. Look how many people are here, and all of you lovely, lovely people who have your video on so we can see who you are. You know how happy that makes me. That is just a little act of kindness on your part for making us feel good on this end of the screen. Because let me tell you, it's very hard to present just a black screen. I can't do it. That's when I just want to go home, even though I am at home, but you know what I mean. Oh, well, Linda, where should we start today talking about romance? We did make a promise that we were going to talk about the top three things we learned. And I have to say, every time I write one of these books, it's very exciting for me because I don't know at the beginning what it is I'm going to learn by the end of all of our research. And we read hundreds of books going through and comparing different genres, comparing within the genre, comparing different styles. And so it takes us a while. And as you can imagine, we keep track of all these books in the Fictionary software so that we can compare it to, the outlines that are in there. And it helps us be very structured on how we're creating these books. We then, once we're ready, we take it out of Fictionary and we do our final kind of putting it together in Google Docs. Then we send it off to our structural editor. Oh, wait, our structural editor is here. And who would that be? Oh, look, it's Lisa Taylor. Lisa, wave at everybody. Yay! And then we were super, super lucky that we had, oh, we got a lot of middles here, sorry. We had unbelievable beta readers, and our beta readers went just above and beyond for us on giving us feedback on small things like, okay, typos, yes, I am known for that, and but also really important structural issues, issues where we didn't see the structure ourselves, or issues where we thought something was clear but it just wasn't, and but to us it is. And you know how when you get buried in something, you can see it and you think, well, that's so obvious, and someone else goes, what is this? So that's kind of my summary. Linda, what do you have to say about it?
Well, it was a very educational experience for one thing. I read more books in a very short time than I thought possible, and I would read one and go, this just doesn't quite. It doesn't, there's some out there that don't quite follow the structure as well, and so because of that, we wanted to make sure that what we were doing. I mean, that's not to say that there can't be anomalies, but we were looking for things that would really solidly give you the lessons that we were hoping to teach. But like Christina said, finding patterns, oh my goodness, that was like we would have these aha moments all the time where we'd be like, oh, look at this. We see this in every book. It was like kind of like mind blowing. And it was just I thought we worked together really well. And I'm ready to, hey, Christina, when you're ready to do another one, let's do it. It was fun. I mean, it was a lot of hard work. I'm not going to say that, but I feel like because I am a romance writer, that this has like taken my ability to with my books and my writing. I have so much more confidence now that what I'm doing is on the right track, and that when I'm doubting anything, all I have to do is go look at this book now and go, okay, here's what I need to have. And sorry, I've got a cat here who wants to be part of the part of
Part of the
this
show.
part of the show. So I thought it was just there were a lot of things that came up that just I think surprised both of us in terms of patterns. And when we would see them, we would just be like, kind of, our mouth would drop like, wow, this is really cool. So it was very educational, and I loved every bit of the process.
Yes, every bit. I'm sure that's true. Okay,
Maybe
we'll
not
go.
copy edited quite so much, but the rest of it was all, I mean, again, learning,
Yeah.
just going through all of that was just and seeing that there really were patterns that you didn't expect. There were some things that I kind of had a sense for, there's going to be conflict, there's going to be obstacles, but some of the things,
There's going to be a happily ever after moment, for example, in a romance. We all know this. That is a given. But there's other things we didn't know. So Linda and I have we went through and thought, well, what were the three biggest eye openers for us when we were reading through the books and hit that glorious moment of, oh, wait a minute. And this has happened for me in writing secrets a fantasy and also doing secrets writing a mystery with Lisa, that you think, wow, every book? Okay. And then when you start reading the books, you start looking for it and you can't help but see it. You think, oh, well, there's this piece and there's that piece. So we're going to start with something called force proximity. So Linda, I'll give that one to you and talk a little bit about what force proximity is and why it's important in a romance. And then we'll talk about the patterns that popped out from there.
Well, forced proximity is the concept of putting your love interests together so that they can spend time together, even if they're reluctant about it at first, so they get to know each other. If they don't get to know each other, then how can they fall in love? And I didn't realize until we started on this process that it's in every single book. In one way or another, it's there. You may find that in some cases, the forced proximity is, they're setting up something. They have to share an apartment or they have to share this. In some cases, you may find in some more modern books that forced proximity doesn't come in a physical proximity of being together in the same room, but we're sharing post-it notes. We're using social media to communicate, and they're still developing their romance. But the forced proximity is really they're kind of again they're kind of stuck with each other in a way is what it is. That's why we call it forced. And I was really surprised by the fact that it's there in I think every single book. I probably read 30 books, maybe more, to get ready for this. And I, of course, had all the other books that I've read in the last 10 years in my mind. And it's there in every single book. So
And there, I'm just going to add in there when you're talking about the different books. So once we selected our books, so we've got our 6 books, we read them 10, 20, 30 times. And what we do is we go through each scene, ask ourselves why it is in the book, how is it contributing? Is it one of the key scenes? And by that I mean, is it the opening image? Is it the lead up to the inciting incident? Is it the inciting incident? Is it the reaction to the exciting and et cetera, et cetera? And then we start looking at what happens in each of these scenes. And we got to when we got to force proximity, my big surprise was it can end really quickly. It doesn't have to be something that takes you through the whole novel. And when we looked at the wedding date, or which ends super soon, they're barely off the elevator when they don't need it anymore because they're so attracted to each other. They're just staying together, right? And in Flatshare, the moment that the female character, whose name I just forgot, and I can't even believe that, considering the amount of times I've read that book.
Tiffy.
But the moment she moves in, Tiffy, the moment she moves in, folks, forced proximity is done. It's over. We don't need it anymore. They have a 6 months lease. Their romance hasn't progressed enough yet to be together just because they're attracted, but they have 6 months now. They share an apartment. And so there it is. And so that part of the story, it's just done. But if it hadn't have been there, there was no romance.
That's true. We saw that also in The Bodyguard, where there's a something. Well, now not well. We'll get to that. I don't want to confuse that one.
Okay, we'll do the bodyguard next when we do weaving scenes.
Weaving, yes, let's do weaving. You talk about weaving.
Yeah, so in the weaving, so that was the thing that jumped out at us was weaving the scenes. And for us, what that means is we are looking at the story arc scenes, and we're looking at the inciting incident of the external plot and the exciting incident of the romance plot, and seeing where those scenes fit in the context of each other. And what we discovered is there's 2 types of weaving that I didn't expect this going in. I thought, well, you have an external plot, it goes the whole way through. Of course it does. Well, that's not actually true. So when we look at a novel like The Bodyguard, it does go the whole way through. And so it has a full story arc. The external story is about a bodyguard who is protecting a famous actor, and he doesn't really want to be protected, so he's annoyed, so there's conflict right away. And so the external story arc is her, she has to protect him. That's it. And the romance story arc is, of course, the two of them leading to their happily ever after moment. And so the story arc for the two of them weave together. And the the story arc for the external in this case cannot be removed. It just can't be. If you take away that she's his bodyguard, she's never meeting a famous actor somewhere and having enough time to be with him and getting back to forced proximity, which is a really big deal for novels. And so she she basically has to have this job and keep this job. And so in the subplot or external plot, when she leaves her job, she's also separated from him. And so the two story arcs are so interwoven between the two. And then when we looked at other story arcs, some of them don't have all of the five scenes, which is, it completely works. And if you go through the book and you'll see the different examples on the scene or the section on weaving, that it is glaring when you look at it together as a pattern of how the authors are doing weaving.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting because I kind of thought that a subplot would need to have all five story arc scenes and go all the way through the story, and it just does not. Depending on your story, you may decide that you can wrap it up by the midpoint or even sooner. Sometimes those external goals, like the external goal that Drew has at the beginning of the bodyguard, I mean of the wedding date, is his goal is to get a date to the wedding so he doesn't feel this like shame and embarrassment. But as soon
Yeah.
as he asks her to go, he's checked off that goal. He's like, okay, boom, I got my date. I'm good. And so he's not chasing that goal anymore.
So I got an interesting question from you. It's Julia. She's kind of making fun of it, but I think you should answer this question. And
Let me
doesn't that
see.
say a lot about why people struggle with dating apps?
Yeah, I think
And
that could
that
be.
forced
Maybe we should
proximity.
maybe we should write a book about that.
Um, so Lauren wants to know, does forced proximity lead to forced needs from one to the other, or is proximity enough?
Well, I think it depends on the story because I think that remember that in a romance, it's the goal is all about that inner turmoil or that wound, that misconception that the protagonist has. And so sometimes the other love interest might be perfectly well adjusted and doesn't really have much of a story arc, but the protagonist is like got a lot of baggage that they need to address. So maybe being with that other person, the other person is maybe helping them to address some of that, make that character growth that they need to make over the course of the story. But you may not see character growth in that other character. It might be just that one. So there might be needs that are being fulfilled by being with that person, or maybe it's aggravating some things with the protagonist too. It's like, oh, I don't want to be in love. I don't want to find you attractive. And it's like aggravating them and it can actually exacerbate all the stuff that's going on with them.
Yep. John would like to know, was there a particular group of, oops, that just binged, was there a particular group of subgenres that the Sevens books were grouped into? So, John, we tried to pick a variety. If we look at the wedding date, there's really no subgenre. It's a flat up, as tight as you can get romance with very minimal external plot. And I love looking in that book because it's so structurally beautiful and there's not a lot of distractions. So if you want to just look at just that, or Mean Streak has a mystery subplot where someone is stalking this actor and she's got to protect the guy from it, and you
It
know
means bodyguard.
how's she gonna find it? Sorry, Bodyguard. I know I said Mean Streak. It's because I was looking at that yesterday for something. It's in my head. All of these books are so in my head, I get confused between them. With Bodyguard, that it's got a clear subgenre to it, but a romance doesn't have to have a clear subgenre. It can, absolutely, but it doesn't have to.
Yeah, we have one that had fantasy in it, which is the 7 Year Slip. We had another one that was more of a mystery. That was a flat share, had a mystery to it. So they all had different things. We tried to read as many different things as we could, and sometimes, they worked really well, and some of them, sometimes we have, because we're rated G, we tried to pick things that weren't going to be
Yep.
offensive to people, so that kind of ruled out some spicier stuff. Uh, but you can see that those subplots or those external plots have those elements of other genres in them, like the mystery or fantasy or thriller in them.
Mhm. So, another great question. Lauren wants to know, can you give an example of external and romance plot not interwoven all the way through? So, yes. So, we're going to look at the flat share. So, the flat share is about Leon. He needs money because his brother has been accused of a crime that he didn't actually commit, and he needs money for the lawyer. Tiffy has a brutal ex relationship and she needs money so she can move out from this place she's living in with him into a place with Leon. And so they text they actually don't meet right away. Their inciting incident is text messaging. That's when their meet cute happens online, which happens in life right now. And so before the story starts, their external inciting incidents are um, Leon's brother is arrested. Uh, Tiffy's ex-boyfriend brings home a new girlfriend to the apartment. Well, that's a bit of a shakeup there, isn't it? So that's the external, happens before. We learn about it in backstory. Then we have the inciting incident where the two of them meet on text messages. And then the next story arc scene is the climax of the external plot. Tiffy moves in with Leon. And then plot point one comes when Leon admits first he cares about Tiffy. And then we see the full romance story arc. But the external is done as soon as she moves in. They've both met their goal of they need money. Basically, they're saving money by sharing this flat. And the cute part of this story is, which way does it go? She's there at night and he's there during the day because he works overnight. And at weekends, he stays with his mom. And so he's got somewhere else he can be. And so they don't actually see each other. It's everything is done online until they first meet. And in the plot point one, he doesn't want to meet her because the relationship is so good. He doesn't want to wreck it. He's worried that, if we actually meet, and so that carries through. Then they go on a date in the middle plot point, and then they have their breakup moment, and then they have their happily ever after moment. But the external plot is done very early in the story. Okay, so then let's go to, I lost my thingy. I want to go to our third point that we want to cover. And here, I'm going to tell you, I almost fell out of my chair when I saw this. And the same thing happened in the fantasy novel for me for one of the story arc scenes in the fantasy stories that you think, wait a minute, does this happen in everyone? Really? So Lynn is going to talk about the structure of a climax scene in a romance novel and what generally seems to happen there.
Well, of course, we know that in a romance, it wouldn't be a romance if we didn't have a happy ending. So if you're writing something and you don't have a happy ending, you might have a love story and not a romance. So that being said, when Christine and I got to that romance climax scene, not only do we have that declaration of love or that happily ever after conclusion, but it came in the climax of the climax scene. So it was just a very specific location for that climax to happen. It didn't just we didn't kind of hint around that it was going to happen here or maybe have it happen. No, it was in the climax of the climax scene. Very, very specific in every single one that we read.
Yep. And then you start looking at the rest of the structure and you pull out all the scene middles from these scenes. And one of the love interests expresses a fear about the relationship in some form. And it's in the scene middle. And there it is. You think, okay, so now we have fear. So there's still, even in the climax scene, the reader is still going, are they going to make it? I mean, we know they are, but are they? Because it could be a love story and we're not told, and then we're going to be very angry about that. But it's leading right up to making that climax scene more emotional, and it just makes it better because right up until that last second, we've got a one of them, I don't know, I'm scared, which, it's a romance. And then, we started in the book, we go through all the story arc scenes like that and pull out what are the patterns in the story arc scenes. And so when you're writing your story, so maybe when you're outlining your scenes or when you're editing your scenes, if you go through the checklist that we put at the back of the book for what these scenes should do, you don't have to hit all of it, right? Connie liked that checklist. Like she's clapping for us. That's so nice. Yay, Connie. And the goal with this checklist, so we pulled out the key points for all of the genre specific scenes. And in those, that's for you to use as a reference. It doesn't mean you have to do every single function that we're listing, but hopefully it gives you some ideas of what you can have in the novel and look for things that might be missing that might be key to a romance story. And we've highlighted some of the things that we think really, really should be in there. But again, you're the artist and you get to decide. It's never set in stone what we're saying. We're trying to give you enough information that you can write the best book possible. But it sure was fun. Okay, now let me just go over the chat.
Yep.
Desiree, I missed number 2. What was that? So forced proximity. Number 2 was weaving the story arc scenes and knowing that the external plot doesn't have to have all 5 story arc scenes, and it doesn't have to go all the way through the book. So the Flatshare was the example where the climax scene of the external comes before plot point 1 of the romance. Some of the others, you might have 4 of the story arc scenes. If it goes toward the end of the book, typically you're going to have a climax scene for that external goal. It may come in the same scene as a happily ever after, or maybe not. Connie says checklist golden nugget. Okay.
I think the other thing too about the external, which was surprising to me, was the degree to which, at least in the books that we looked at, I know there's a different way of doing this, but all of ours had mostly stuff that was woven together to support the romance.
Yep.
So in other words, it wasn't an external plot line that existed kind of just in, kind of by chance in the same book. They were that it was all there to kind of support the romance, to drive it together, to try to drive those things forward, to show us, oh, here's why we have that forced proximity. Here's what would happen if we didn't have that forced proximity. Here, and the thing is that as the protagonist gets closer to achieving the external goal, it also helps them to get closer to their solving that problem they have, that internal wound or misconception. So they do work together well to drive each other forward.
Okay, I want to say one more thing about scene structure on the climax scene. And so we're backing up to the beginning of the scene now. We start at the climax. Happily ever after moment happens in the climax of the scene. Somebody has fear in the middle. So there's the entry hook. Every hook at this scene is related to the romance. And so the books we looked at, The Bodyguard, Jack and Hannah are trying to have a second date because their first one, she got shot. Didn't work out so well for her. So second one, and so the question is, will the do-over date be any good? That's the entry hook, and of course we're hoping it will be. In Happy Place, Harriet's running through the airport, and we want to know, why is she running through the airport? And of course she's going to go and she's trying to catch wind before he gets on a flight. 7-Year Slip. Ewan is taking Clementine somewhere, but we don't know where, and we're really hoping it's romantic gesture. And oh, guess what it is? Then we have Flatshare. Because they met via post-it notes and sticky notes, Justin proposes to Tiffy with sticky notes. And so the question is, will she meet him there? And is she going to say yes? Just for the summer, Justin and Emma, 2 Justins. This was a bit of a bummer in picking 2 books and both have a Justin. Got to say that got confusing. But with that, they had a really hard time emotionally. And so here the question is, can both of them get over those emotional scars before they get together? And the wedding date, Alexa's very not confident about herself. And so the question is, will she actually tell Drew she loves him? And so every entry hook is related to the romance storyline in the book. And so if you take your climax and you do that, it's just going to be awesome. Okay, Raquel says, does the separation need to be a break of the relationship? Linda.
I would say no. It is what you see most of the time is some kind of a breakup. But I mean, have you ever watched a Hallmark movie? And I know this is a movie and not a book, but it's a great example of, oh, one of the characters is in a coma. They didn't break up, but they're not really there. They're not part of it. And so that's a low point because the protagonist is like, I don't know if they're going to come out of that coma. Or maybe somebody gets orders to, they're going to go to Siberia for the next 5 years. That's going to probably cause pretty much of a damper. So it's not, doesn't have to necessarily be like, I don't ever want to see you again kind of breakup, but it's something that causes there to be some kind of a separation.
Yes. Okay. So if anyone doesn't have the book, I just put the link in the chat. I think I got all the questions there. I also want to thank everybody who's left a review so far. That's really, really nice. And I do want to say about the reviews, some people have been writing very long reviews. If you'd like to leave a review, please don't feel you have to do that. One sentence is great. That's it. You don't have to write. It's not a competition, and we don't expect people to write reviews that are, quite thorough and very informative, and we really appreciate and love reading them. But I'd rather have more reviews if it looks overwhelming than it is.
Put the rating out there if that's all you want to do.
Yes, that's it. Don't have to put much. Yes. All right. So any other questions before we head out for the day on romance?
We're
Oh,
expecting to see lots of happily ever afters coming forward.
yes. Yes, we are. Thank you, Lauren, who's
I
looking at the
don't have anything else to say, but congratulations!
Yes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Go, girls! Go, go, go!
Thank you, Carolyn. That's very nice and very cheerleadery. That's
Oh, and
just
John
right.
just said this is the best call he's ever been on. Thank you, John. We'll send you a check later.
Okay, now, oh, look at all the hearts we're getting. That's fantastic. John, the
That's
pressure's
awesome.
on. Like, how are we supposed to now? Now the pressure's on. Now I'm all stressed. What are we going to do next event? Look at all the hearts. Look at everybody doing all their little things. That's fantastic.
Thanks. The support from the community has been really just so
Yep.
encouraging and really kind of overwhelming. So thank you all.
Oh, Linda's going to cry. She's crying in the happily ever after moment right there.
Ah,
Oh, yeah. Thank you, everybody. We really appreciate it. The support is wonderful. And thank you for coming today and listening to us talk about our book, which is always fun.